Hey guys, Fusion here, and today we're out here with the toes all out, and I'm gonna show you how I keep my mealworms in this little 3-drawer system. And if you stick around to the end, I'll even show you a cheaper method to keep some mealworms. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, why you get me wet?
Bubbles.
Okay, you play with bubbles. I gotta play with this, okay?
Okay.
Alright. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna notice is I have a lot of junk and mealworms up here. And the reason I do that is because these are basically beetle houses. That's how I like to think of them. You wanna give your beetles, your darkling beetles, a place to hide and feel comfortable in, because the less your beetles are stressed, the more eggs that your beetles will lay. So yeah, I just take things that are decomposable, like the little sleeves that come from Starbucks and empty toilet paper rolls, and I just throw them up here. And on this second drawer here is where I separate out my little cocoons, I guess you could call them. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find one right now, but that's why you see all this skin here, is because they molt from being worms to being beetles. And lastly, we have this drawer here that I basically use in the same way as I do the top drawer, where I basically just keep beetles in it. It's gonna make a whole lot more sense when we start running through here and actually making it happen. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, so every once in a while you're gonna have to come in here and reset your colony, and make sure you wear a mask when you do this because this stuff can get really dusty. Alright, so first I went ahead and I got those 2 drawers and I emptied them all out into one. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take about half and just dump it in here and start shaking. Now these trays here, I bought these trays from Amazon, and they come in different mesh sizes. They slide right into a 5-gallon bucket, so it makes sifting through your colony extremely simple. Alright, so once you dump most of your colony in there, you want to come in here and make sure that you get all of the beetles and the worms out of your housing. I typically use this stuff 2 or 3 times before I send it to the compost pile. Today, I'm going to be reusing it, so I'm just putting it to the side. Alright, so once you got all of your housing material out of the way, you want to come in here with your hand and mix it up a little bit, or you can just take everything and shake it up like this. And the whole purpose of this first sift is just to get the frass, which is basically the poop, and separate it from the worms, the food, the beetles, and everything else that's in your bin. Then the same thing for this other level. You want to keep on shaking. Now in this one, the mesh is finer. It's still gonna let the smaller worms through, but it shouldn't let any beetles or any big worms through. Alright, once I got that mixed in there pretty good, I'll take that out and dump them in here. Alright, this next one here should get most of your oatmeal and your little baby worms away from the frass. And then you just take the rest of the stuff and dump it in your drawer. Now this last one here is so fine that it's going to keep whatever substrate you're using, is going to keep it out of the frass. Some people use oatmeal. I like to use wheat bran because you can buy it for cheap in North Carolina where I live. Make sure you really shake this last little bit through, because this is where you're going to get your frass. So once I got most of it, I'll go ahead and dump it in there, and look what we end up with. Some really fine frass. So now you want to put everything back in the reverse order, and then take whatever else you haven't sifted through and go ahead and dump it in there. And you just rinse and repeat. Alright, we got all the housing out of there, then we shake. Alright, we got just about everything through. Go ahead and dump these guys in here. Remember, we're not sorting them yet, so this is why you still have the worms and the beetles and everything together. This part is simply to just get all the frass out of the wheat bran. Alright, after some good shaking, I'm pretty confident that there is no more frass in here, so let's go ahead and dump all of these guys over there. No more frass on this one either. Go ahead and put these to the side. Alright, we are on the last tray. I'm pretty sure that none of this is brass because it doesn't fit through the mesh. So we can finally go ahead and put that to the side. And we are done. This is all of the frass that I harvested in only 3 months in a tiny little 3-tier system. This stuff is really good for your garden. It's good for your plants, good for your compost. It has a lot of good uses as a gardener. So what I do is I take this bag here that's breathable. You're usually supposed to use this as a sandbag. And this is actually where I keep all of my frass that I accumulate over time. I think it'll be easier for me to pour it if I put it in this drawer first. Alright, now let's go ahead and dump it in there. There we go. We got all of our frass nice and collected. Look at all this frass I've accumulated. Alright, now I'm going to show you guys how I separate the beetles from the larvae to the worms. All right, so what I used to do is I used to take those green trays that you see me use just a second ago, and I would do my absolute best to try and sift out the worms from the beetles, and that became too tedious. So what I ended up doing is I went online and I actually found these trays that are supposed to help you sift out the pupae from the large worms, the medium worms, and the small worms. And just like the green trays, they also fit on top of a 5-gallon bucket. This is my first time trying them out today, so let's see how it works out. Take this colony here, go ahead and pour it in. Not everything's gonna fit at once, so let me go ahead and start sifting. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and pour the rest of the colony. Alright, so this top section here is supposed to sift out all of the pupae. I don't really have a lot of pupae right now, so we're just going to take this whole thing and put it to the side. And the second tray here is supposed to sift out all of the large mealworms. So let's go ahead and shake this thing up and see what kind of division we get. All right, you know what? This one actually did a really good job. I see mostly worms here. There's no wheat bran left. There's plenty of beetles and stuff with it, but let's see what it looks like below this tray. All right, so here we have a lot of wheat bran, so let's go ahead and shake this thing up first. Alright, so after a ridiculous amount of time shaking later, we finally got down to the worm. And I'm actually surprised to see only worms. There's not a single beetle in here. That makes my job a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and dump out their housing. And I'm going to take this that I know is just mealworms and put them right here. Some of these guys are stuck. I'll just help them back through. Alright, so we have all the worms right there, and we are down to the very last tray, which is the small size. So let's go ahead and give this thing a shake, get all the bran through there, and see what we're left with. This one actually did a really good job. Look at that. That is all mealworms right there, not a single beetle in sight. So I'll just take this here and dump it with the rest of the mealworms. Get out of there, get out of there. And then once you get to the last few, you can just work them back through there with your fingers. All right, that right there is nothing but worms. And in here, since we already went ahead and sifted out all of the frass, there's probably a whole bunch of eggs, a whole bunch of tiny little baby worms. And you can go ahead and reuse this bedding because it hasn't been worked through by the worms yet. You don't want to put this with the beetles. You want to go ahead and put this with the mealworms because it still contains baby worms and worm eggs. So let's go ahead and dump it with the worms. Alright, so now that we're at this point where we separated out a bunch of mealworms, we still have to find a way to deal with the mix of beetles and worms that we have over here. So how do you do that? Well, what I like to do is this. First, I take this stuff here that is just food scraps and I throw it to the compost pile. And I don't care if it has worms in it. I do not care at all because your colony is going to produce so many worms that losing a few is not going to hurt anything. Alright, so how do I do it? Well, very simple. I take a mesh that doesn't let any worms through and I put it at the bottom of my bucket. And then I just work my way up to the top to a reasonable size like this that I know is only going to catch like really big beetles. Directly below that, I am hoping that it catches most beetles, and this one should catch all beetles. The problem is some of my worms are so fat that they don't go through and they stay with the beetles, but let's go ahead and do that now and see how good it works out. Here we go, dropping in the mix of beetles and mealworms. This very first one, every single worm should go right through. Alright, my apologies guys. Just about every beetle fell through there, and it still left a lot of freaking worms that didn't fall through. So I started off with the big mesh size, a little too big. This is the one where most of your worms should fall through and all of your beetles should stay behind. So let's go ahead and give this one a shake. Alright, once you get to this point, you're not going to see any more action. Shaking them is not going to make the worms go through because they're so long that they have to get vertical to get through. So here's where my little trick comes in. I determine the tray that the beetles don't fit through, and I go below it all the way until I get to the finest mesh that nothing can get through, and I put it right on top of that. Why? Because I'm trying to capture all of the worms. I don't care about all the other sorting because it's pointless to me. It's only going to contain worms. I'm trying to separate out the beetles. And this is how I do it, guys. I take my beetles and I put them to the side for just a second. And then I take some wheat bran, some brand new wheat bran, and I fill this tray up right here. Remember, this is the tray with the fine mesh. Then I take this one and I put it right on top. That's going to encourage the worms to dig down and hurry up and get into that bran, because when they feel substrate underneath, they know that it's safe. If there wasn't any substrate there, they would feel like they're gonna fall in. So this makes the process go by a little faster. Then what I like to do is I like to come in here and agitate them. Piss them off a little bit. Don't let them get too comfortable. And that's it, guys. I'm gonna let them sit for about 5 or 10 minutes. It's been about 7-8 minutes now, so I'm just gonna go through here and piss them off again because they're getting a little too comfortable. Then we'll give them another 5 or 10 minutes. All right, the wait is finally over, guys. So now what I do is I take this here that I know contains all of my beetles and I just dump it into a drawer. This right here is straight worms, so we're just gonna take all of this and put it with the rest of the worms. And that's it, guys. We got straight worms and a mix of beetles and worms. All right, so now your colony has worms and beetles mixed in together. Bless you. You're welcome. So now what you're gonna do is every once in a while when you come in here and you feed them and you open up your drawer, if one of your worms turn into a pupae, they're gonna do it at the surface of the substrate, which is perfect because they're gonna be so easy to see. So all you do is just grab it, open up your middle drawer, make sure it has a little bit of oatmeal or wheat bran or whatever in there. And what that will do is they will have their own separate drawer where they'll be able to reproduce and do whatever they want to do undisturbed from any worms or any other beetles. And that's it. Now, as promised, I'm going to show you guys a cheaper and easier alternative than a tier 3 system like this. And that's right over here. I have a little colony with a bunch of mealworms, beetles, eggs, you name it, all mixed together. And this thing is tiny. Look at it compared to my hand. And you can use an empty old Amazon box. You can buy you a little cricket house like this. No matter what, as long as it's a little container, you can have all 3 different life stages of the mealworms living together. I don't care what anybody else out there in Google or anywhere else tells you. You can have mealworms thriving all together in a tiny little box just like this. I've had this little box for over 2 years. And all you do is go in here and reset it 2 or 3 times a year. Well, there you have it, guys. If you need a bigger system like this to give your chickens some treats every once in a while, or maybe you're like me and you have a little lizard that you have to feed, you can use something as simple as a little box. And no matter what situation you find yourself in, there's always a method that you can use to make it work for you. And in the near future, I'm actually going to make a self-sorting colony with a system that's gonna sort out the eggs from the larva and from the mealworms, automated by itself. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that. But my name is Fusion, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Fusion Grows. I hope I see you guys on the next one, and have a wonderful day.